Nokia plans to cut 10,000 more jobs, bringing the total to 1 in 3 staff as it loses market share to cell phone rivals Apple and Samsung and burns through cash, raising new fears over its future. In a second profit warning in 9 weeks, Nokia said that its phone business would post a deeper than expected loss in the second quarter due to tougher competition, which it expected to continue. For more, Toby Shapshak, editor at Stuff Magazine, joins us in studio. And Toby, if we just go to anecdotal evidence, I'm sure that everybody sitting at this table owned their first cell phone was a Nokia brick. The big, is that right?
Correct. Well, I'm not quite that old, Brian, but it was.
All right, you're out of the spectrum then.
I had a 2100.
Did you?
The original, one of the original phones that came in, yeah. So, look, the thing is that historically Nokia had significant market share, and they still retain significant market share, and they're under enormous pressure right now. And certainly it looks really bad for them. But
I didn't finish my analysis before you go. So do any of you have a Nokia phone today? That's where I'm going. No, well, you're not jumping to it and saying you have one. So that was my analysis, on the ground analysis.
I have been using one. I've been using the Lumia 800. I think it's a really good phone. Is that a Nokia? That is an iPhone. And
this is not very substantive in terms of your argument.
But I've just sent the Lumia back yesterday, actually. And it's a very good phone. And Windows Phones 7.5, as they call it, is a very good operating system. And if you look at the rationale for why the CEO, Stephen Elop, chose Microsoft, it makes an enormous amount of sense. Everybody is running Android. Everybody has an Android phone. And if Nokia, the original maker of cell phones, had have chosen Android, it would have just been a commodity supplier of an operating system by somebody else. And it suited Nokia and it suited Microsoft for them to get into bed together and to develop this ecosystem. That's because that's the new buzzword, that it's an ecosystem, because that's what Apple's done. It's taken the iPhone with the apps and everything else and iTunes and made it an ecosystem.
Toby, can it survive? Can Nokia survive?
Well, it's a very good operating system, and you know, no one ever got fired for buying Microsoft, not even Stephen Elop. So the chances are that they're going to build on it, and it's certainly loved by the IT administrators. It's loved by a whole lot of the back-end techie people. That said, it's a very interesting dynamic that the balance of power has shifted so significantly in the cell phone market. And the two significant players are Apple and Samsung. Samsung has overtaken Nokia to make the most smart cell phones and smartphones. And it is a battle between the two ecosystems. Samsung is the biggest seller of the Android devices. IDC recently came out with figures saying that Android's market share would decline and Windows market share, Windows Phone would increase. And it's quite interesting to see. We don't quite know yet. I mean, Nokia's taking a lot of pain.
How are you feeling about the investment case for Nokia?
Well, I don't invest offshore, so I'm glad I don't have to decide this one. But some of my observations are from a profitability perspective. Nokia is obviously under immense pressure. Their share price is now back where it was in 1996.
8-year low. Isn't it an 8-year low today?
Yeah.
However, from a market share perspective, if you look outside of the West, then Nokia actually has a very large market share. And this is pre-smartphones as well. So if you're looking at developing countries, like in South America, India, some African countries and China, they actually still have a significant market share, and the key is to leverage off of that and return it to profitability. And I think they are more or less moving in the right direction to do that. This tie-up with Microsoft, I would say, is the right decision. The thing with Nokia is you can see in all of the technology industries, it's extremely cyclical, and you can be in front and think that you have the world at your feet, and within a few years it can change. And you can see, look at BlackBerry, and we might look back in 5 or 8 years' time and think the same of Apple. So this is the nature of
maybe Nokia's got a high-tech division underground somewhere, and tomorrow they're going to revolutionize the industry.
Nokia's launching a $68 smartphone. Is that correct?
The Ashes, yeah.
So if we look at it, are Windows, Microsoft, and Nokia looking at the low end of the market? Android is eventually, through the purchase of Motorola, going to probably start creating devices that are under its own brand to try and replicate what Apple's done. So I think the dynamics is going to get quite interesting in the next 3 or 4 years. I think Apple's still is at the front, and it's, as I said, due to this
A
ecosystem.
$68 smartphone. You called it the Ashes.
It's the range is called Asher.
Asher.
And it's quite an interesting thing. So now, the point I was going to make is that Microsoft and Nokia are suffering in the smartphone market, but Nokia is not suffering at the feature phone level. The 70% of the internet pages accessed in Africa via mobile are from Symbian, which is Nokia's old operating system, Symbian Series 40 as opposed to Series 60, which was their high-end one. And the market share of Nokia is between 30 and 40% in emerging markets, where we're told all of the growth is coming from. So they have such incredible brand presence. People will buy a Nokia based on the brand alone. I mean, you should see some of the knockoffs. They don't even say Nokia, but they kind of look like the brand. And Stephen Elop told me in an interview last year that when Nokia introduced a dual SIM phone, one of the Asher range, I think it's the 201 or the 200, that they sold 18 million of those in the first quarter, and that all of the cheaper Chinese alternatives went out of business in some of the markets they operate in. So their brand presence in Africa and emerging markets is significant, and it has a lot of
But
value.
having said that, they are cutting 19% of their workforce by 2013. That is radical.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think this is more of a historical problem. If you compare where Nokia is now to where BlackBerry is now, Nokia's taken the pain. They've taken the pain, and they've had to really work on the overheads. You can see they're shutting down plants in Germany and Finland and other high-cost manufacturer centers, and they're of course moving to China, where Apple does. All of the other major manufacturers are building in low-cost manufacturing areas. So I think you're just seeing a lot more of the kind of cost shedding and rationalizing that they've had to do.
Another question, perhaps before you guys jump in, is this a company-specific issue rather than an industry-wide issue? It's just that they've got their timing wrong on perhaps their devices right now, but it could rectify. But just getting to that company-specific, this is Nokia, isolated, ring-fenced. It's not what we're going to see from other tech players.
Well, it doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, there's been a lot of pain for a manufacturer like HTC, for instance. They seem to have missed a beat as well, and they've had a lot of difficulty. People are writing off BlackBerry in the same way, and yet BlackBerry is the most popular smartphone in South Africa, enormously popular in Africa. Why? Because in developed markets like North America, people are feature conscious. They don't mind how much money they spend on their data because they want the apps, they want the touchscreen, they want whatever. In an emerging market context where problems like electricity and battery life are significant, you don't want a smartphone with a big touchscreen because you can't charge it up. You might not be able to afford it. So this appears to be a very specific Nokia issue, and yet their Asher range and their kind of entry level to mid-range phones are doing very well based on their brand.
A final question from you. I've been dominating the desk. Is that because neither of you had a question on this front?
I think the key question, I mean, from the people who are buying Apple at the moment think that Apple has conquered the West, and they will gain market share going into the developing world. And the people who are backing Nokia at the moment say that they're going to defend their market share and will be able to leverage off Microsoft's operating system. I mean, in your crystal ball, how do you think that battle is going to work out?
It's a peculiar phenomenon, isn't it? Because everybody likes to write off Microsoft. They like to say the moment has come and things are gone, and look at, and yet, you know, Microsoft is what the industry calls a really fast follower. They're very good at bouncing back. They know how to spread their bets across the industry, and their research departments are quite significant. And everyone wrote them off when they went into Xbox. Everyone wrote them off when they started the Windows 8 platform that would work across tablets and PCs. And we will see when they launch later this year where they are. Apple gets a disproportionate amount of PR and good press, and because of the nature of how their industry is and how Apple and Steve Jobs have built it, they make an enormous amount of profit on a single handset. The only thing that differentiates is, there's one or two models in the market and different storage sizes. So it's hard to compare it to that, whereas Samsung, for instance, spends an enormous amount on marketing and branding and are extremely aggressive. And they're helped by the South Korean government. They get enormous breaks into the industry, and they've worked very aggressively to get where they are. I don't think we've really seen the full extent of the Microsoft Nokia strategy yet. I think they're still getting there, and I think Nokia is rationalizing their strength. I don't want to sound like a Nokia apologist or a Microsoft apologist. You know, the great thing about competition is it's pretty fierce. You know, I'd love to see Eskom face a little bit of competition, you know. I mean, they're a bit like a...
You got the dig in at Eskom. We're running out of time, but thanks so much, Toby. Appreciate it. And gentlemen, thanks very much for your time. Toby Shapshak, editor at Stuff Magazine.